Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hurts, and today we are continuing with our offseason theme, Dynasty Season. Want to look ahead and take a long view on basically what years of a player's career we should expect them to be a top-performing fantasy player. Now, this is not an end-all, be-all, strategy like we've talked about. There's no one perfect strategy, no one perfect metric. That's a piece of the puzzle. I think we have some interesting takeaways to go over. And by we, I mean myself, and none other than PFF's own Dwayne "The Rock" McFarland. Dwayne, it's February 4th. You got snow in Texas. I got snow in Ohio. Still a great day to be great, though.
Yeah, probably like you and I could do this podcast together like another 10 years, and we might only get that like 2 times, like snow on the ground in Texas and in Ohio. Well, I guess, it's mainly just, is there snow on the ground in Texas? Because it's pretty normal for you guys.
Yeah, seriously.
My kids are excited, though. Missed school yesterday, and they're also out today. So, it like shuts our whole state down.
Now you got to worry about the kiddos at home. My biggest problem is when, delivery man comes to the door and the dogs just lose their damn minds. So, a little bit easier to handle than a live human kid, I would say.
A live human kid.
I am not ready to have children, everyone. But with that out of the way, Dwayne, basically, and I'm sharing my screen as I'm going to try to do much more often on these podcasts, because you know what? If I'm going to take freaking, what we got here, 600 words of notes with some charts and shit, I'm going to put them out there in some way, shape, or form. And that's what we have today. So, Dwayne, I spent the majority of yesterday, which was Thursday, I think. No one can know for sure. Basically trying to update some stats I had done a couple of years ago, looking at the percentage of top 12 or RB1s, wide receiver ones, whatever, top 12 performers at each position relative to their years of experience. So not age, we can save that for a later podcast, but looking at what percentage of QB1s over the last 10 years have been rookies, what percentage have been in the league for 10 plus years. Through this, we're going to go through each position and just talk some higher level takeaways. So let's get after it, starting off with quarterback. For those looking on the screen, I also tweeted this out on Twitter if you want to go catch up. But basically, year one, we don't see a ton of quarterback success. Just 5% of the 120 top 12 quarterbacks over the past 10 years have occurred in their rookie season. Year two, we see a nice boom up to 15%, 12% in year three. After that, fairly, middling until we get to the 10 plus years of age experience, where 38% of the top 12 performers have occurred. So obviously a lot of that to do with Tom Brady, but you even look at Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers. A lot of these guys have just been in the league for 10 plus years. And if you're, as long as your arm isn't going away, we have seen these guys sustain success at an older age better than any other position. But Dwayne, let's start things off with the rookies, because you can kind of see some trends here. Our top 12 rookies dating back 2012 to 2021, we've only had Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, RG3, Andrew Luck, and Russell Wilson. Cam Newton also applied. He was just a couple years earlier, which makes me feel awfully old, but point for another day. All these guys had a nice demonstrated rushing floor in college, and they were all week one starter except for Herbert. Obviously, he had to come in week two after the Chargers, stabbed Tyrod Taylor's lung. What a storyline that was. So, Dwayne, overall thoughts on kind of these rookie quarterbacks, and on the one hand, I want to say we maybe jumped the gun last year on anticipating Fields, Lance, even Lawrence to an extent to have, such a great rookie year. On the other hand, when you kind of look at what those guys brought to the table, they did fit the archetype for what we should have been looking for a successful year one fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is definitely one of those, as your wife's leaving you, you're screaming, the process was right. So, yeah, I mean, we're just looking for the rushing floor, right? And this goes back even way beyond this data. I won't go through all the guys, but history is littered, with the guys. Well, you even mentioned it here. These all applied to Cam Newton, right? Whenever he was a rookie. So yeah, I think if you've got a guy that can, run the ball, a guy that's especially if he's got a coach that's willing to really utilize them in that facet, especially with the design rushing attempts. A lot of this comes from scrambles, but now we're starting to see the true guys like Robert Griffin, is a good example. That Kyler Murray, they were getting a lot of the design rushing attempts, which is really where our thoughts were last year. When you look at Trey Lance, you look at Justin Fields, those guys.
Dwayne, I know you've been looking ahead to some prospects. I'm pulling up our handy dandy PFF draft guide right now. Any early leans on the quarterback class? I've seen certain guys, really getting some rave reviews and at the Senior Bowl and over at the Shrine Bowl. I think Malik Willis was the main guy a lot of people are looking at. But at the same time, I know it's not the most hype class. Have you done enough on these quarterbacks to have a feel on who we could be looking at yet?
No, I haven't done the quarterbacks yet. I've been mostly focused on the running backs, receivers, and tight ends so far. But just looking at their rushing profiles, what Howell did last season, and then, we know with Willis, like those two guys for sure will probably come in with expectations around what they can do as a rusher. Just depends really on what roster they land on, what coordinator do they get, those sort of things.
Kenny Pickett in his bitch ass fake slide, but you know what? He can't do that anymore. Neither can anyone else. I did see a good tweet from our fellow PFF colleague Kevin Cole, where Dwayne, we were talking off the show about trying to keep each other up to date on this, but basically Kevin found some good early research on what successful first round QB picks have shown highest correlation with NFL success. His four main takeaways were EPA generation from being under pressure, scrambling, avoiding sacks, and going with some design runs. So just some interesting information from Kevin right there. EPA types that were more correlated with failed first round quarterback picks, passing, excluding sacks and interceptions, clean pockets early down, and play action. So it really is a different game that we need to be trying to, correlate between college to NFL compared to what we usually just look at in the NFL. We'll continue to improve at doing just that. Now, Dwayne.
Love Kevin Cole and the bucketing and the clustering,
Yeah,
on this show, we provide a cluster of some sorts, but yeah.
All right. So again, only 5% of these 120 QB1s over the past 10 years occurred during their rookie season. We've seen a nice year two leap though. 15% occurred in the second season. That's about an average of 1.8 per year. So out of Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, and Davis Mills, if history is any indication, we should be expecting roughly two of these guys to emerge as top 12 signal callers. We're a year early, Dwayne, right? It's Trey Lance, Justin Fields. Let's get back on the horse. We're here. Or do you think one of these other guys could have something to say about that?
Yeah, I think those are the easiest ones, right? I mean, just because we know what that can do for their fantasy upside. You saw Jalen Hurts last year. So Jalen Hurts is a great example, right, of a year two guy that was really most of his production came through running the football. I mean, if you can get 800 to 1,000 yards rushing, you immediately add 80 to 100 points to your quarterback score. Right. So, it's too easy. And so when you think about this list, I think it definitely leans, to Trey Lance. I think Trevor Lawrence could show a little more. We were both, I think, surprised. There was a small spurt there, early quarter, just after the first quarter of the season.
Right before their bye, maybe the first game after, we were starting to get
the design rushing attempts. And, that's something that we saw in his bag at Clemson. It's not like we're saying, Trevor Lawrence is this great rushing quarterback, but come on, we could get 400 to 500 yards rushing, out of Lawrence. And if he improves in the passing game, I think there's going to be a plus there. And look, here's the bottom line with Lawrence. Nobody wants him. So, it's a guy that's young that could break out, still in his year two, could give, and when I'm leaning into late round picks, I like to lean into more of the unknown, right? Certain guys we've seen kind of here are their parameters, right? They could still have a career season and something where it could happen. But with these rookies specifically, there's so much more that's still unknown, meaning that there could be higher upside. And if the downside's bad, who cares? It's a late round pick. We just drop them.
Yeah, that was exactly kind of my takeaway here. Lance and Fields are probably going to have ADPs pretty close to the top 12, top 15, worst case, and deservingly so. Lawrence and I think Zach Wilson to an extent as well. Those are going to be the guys that, hey, maybe they boom, but it's not going to cost us much to go find out anyway. Yeah. I do have
Lance in the offseason. For me, I think the way to approach him is as the news cycle ebbs and flows, all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, Jimmy G's going to be back and his ADP is going to drop. So if you're doing best balls,
buy Lance.
That's the time to buy, right? Just buy him then, right? If he ends up not being the quarterback, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that's the time you buy. Whenever it's at the peak high, hey, Jimmy's going to be traded. It's the night before the draft and all of a sudden Lance shoots up in ADP, then don't buy him in those drafts. And then eventually we'll actually know really what's going to happen. Is he going to be the starter or not? And then we can really determine, do we want to really embrace, the opportunity cost versus other positions that may be going in the same range as him.
Love this tool we have on PFF.com. It just shows you the fantasy finishes by week for each and every quarterback. You can change it to other positions. And yeah, we can see what Trey Lance came in at halftime, basically in week 4, still manages to put up a QB 18 performance, gets his next start, got taken down about an inch short of the goal line. Otherwise, that QB 20 is looking closer to a QB 12. And, in week 17, when he does get thrown back into the fire, QB 10.
Look at the Justin Fields ones.
Bro, exactly.
Yeah, look, and you got to throw that 29 rank out. He got hurt in that game.
Dude, and he got right when he was starting to catch fire too. That was the worst part, with Fields. And I get it. If you only watched his first couple games, you saw the absolute ugliest part of him, because when we talked about it, he does hold on to the ball too long. We weren't seeing many big time throws along with that. But you look at it, last 4 complete starts, QB3, QB9, QB8, and QB10. Fields or Lance, Dwayne? Assuming, obviously, we know Lance is starting every game.
I'm going with Fields right now just because of what I saw. I think he looks like the better passer of the two. I feel like his accuracy is better. I feel like he started to gain a better understanding of the game. Now, Trey Lance is going to play in a great scheme, but now we're also going to get a scheme similar to what Kyle Shanahan runs in Chicago. So, I think both guys, could be reasonable picks. I know Lance will probably be the more popular one, but right now I would say Fields showed me more. The thing with Fields, if he can just learn, Ian, to get a feel for pocket awareness, right, and use those traits, those athletic traits, to really turn into escapability. It doesn't, everything was just a tick slow for him, and that's what we were seeing early in the season. But if you look at some of the best quarterbacks we have in fantasy football, they have a long average time to throw. And some of the best NFL quarterbacks actually do the same thing, right? The more that you give coverage time to break down, it makes sense, right? You get a better chance of a guy popping free. So I think the opportunity is going to be huge for some of these broken plays and things like that for both of these guys, right? If they can learn how to stay alive in the pocket, then you escape, you get the scramble drill, a lot of huge plays come off of that. We've seen that a ton, like for Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, and so I think there's a good opportunity with that.
It's a good note where average time to throw, I also put average target depth in there. They're more descriptive. I remember I was at the bar a couple months ago during the season, and I looked up and it was like Ben Roethlisberger, number 1 in the NFL in average time to throw. And it's like, well, that's true. I don't think it's exactly saying what you want it to be saying, though. And also, you could also kind of put that PFF's big time throws into that bucket as well. I think those are, a little more indicative on what we're trying to look for in quarterbacks. But again, yards, if they get them on a tight 20-yard window downfield, that's great. If you get it on a dump down to a wide open running back who picks up 20 yards, they all count the same. So just something to keep in mind.
It's kind of a how do they win, right? It's not necessarily can they win. It's when they win, how do they win?
Descriptive, yeah.
Yeah.
Great day to be great. Last thing on quarterbacks, Dwayne, I want to check in on the guys who have been in the league for 10 plus years, and if we should just expect downturns anytime soon, because yes, 38% of the 120 quarterbacks were in their 10th year or later, which equals out to about 4.5 per year. Once we look ahead to 2022, though, there are 6 quarterbacks who, just looking at it, should be expected starters, but have been in the league 10 plus years. And they are Matthew Stafford, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson. Dwayne, I think we could both agree Matt Ryan sticks out as the guy from this group that we wouldn't be expecting to maybe leap back in the top 12 conversation. Who would be your best guess out of this other group between Stafford, Cousins, Tannehill, Rodgers, Russ? Or do you think all these guys are pretty much fine and you're not going to worry too much about their, years starting to pile up?
I'm fine with all those guys. I don't think any of those guys, give me a huge pause as far as the fall off. You could argue with Russell Wilson since
I was the only one I was
rushing has been a bigger part of his game, historically speaking, but he's also had some huge passing years. So, but Wilson for me is more of a good God. Can he get out of Seattle? And, the freaking, a team that runs 10 plays per half, that's the biggest thing holding Russell Wilson back right now. And obviously his play and his finger and his health of his finger was a component of his play down the stretch. It did drop off, but I'm not concerned. Russell Wilson's not an age where I think he's just going to completely fall off the map.
If you go back, last year he only threw 25 touchdowns. Obviously, injuries had a lot to do with that. Previous 4 years, though, he was over 31 each and every time, despite being in such a run-heavy offense. God forbid, Dwayne, maybe he finds his way out of Seattle into a more pass-happy offense. I don't think it's quite time to be hating on Russ. And look, man, the guys, Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, like the true fall off that we saw, we could kind of see it coming in the second half of the year before. I didn't see anything about Russ that was like athletically or arm strength wise, he can't do this anymore. Like I think he's okay for at least another year. Now, are we going to get back to ranking him top 5, top 6 like he always was? That's another question, but I still think he's more than viable as, you know, a borderline QB1.
Like if you sent Russ to Denver, like, man, I would be hard pressed to probably not have.
Why do they have to sell their team right now, man? I'm getting like cold feet on all these quarterbacks because who the hell is going to want to be traded to Denver? Because, you know, these quarterbacks we're talking about are going to have to okay this trade in order to be sent there. And with so much stuff going on, how much are
they going to really care about that? I don't know. Like, I don't know how much they're going to. To me, they're going to look at it and go, "I got Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, Tim Patrick." I hadn't even named KJ Hamler yet. I mean, and I get Javonte Williams, and I get Albert O. Like, seriously, like,
the defense ready to go?
Yeah, is there a better, like, complete offensive skill group than that? I think that's got to be. Now we're assuming some things with Jeudy and some of these guys that haven't necessarily blown up yet. But man, like that to me is very appealing. If I was a quarterback.
All right, let's move on to running back here because this is the one where you can clearly see it is a young man's game. Between year 1 and year 5, we're seeing at least 13% performers in each and every category. Year 2 is the peak with 18% of these 120 RB1s over the past 10 years, truly balling out. Now, year 5, which is the last year of the rookie contract for a first-round pick if the team chooses to exercise that option, or the first year, where they're actually able to sign a new contract or go to a different team, we are still seeing 15%. After that, though, it starts getting rough. Year 6, okay, we've still seen an average of 1.2 running backs per year be a top fantasy performer. After that, though, 8%, 4%, 3%, just 2% that have been in the league for over 10 plus years. I think it's worth noting too, Dwayne, like particularly at running back, but across every position, if you're still in the league after 6 to 7 years, that means you're doing something right. So even the better running backs that have separated themselves during the course of their career haven't been able to stand up to some of the younger guys coming in and out of the league. With that said, we have seen some commonalities between the rookies. Overwhelming majority have been drafted in the top 3 rounds. Really, we only have 6 exceptions. Now, this is based on total full game. We're not looking at per game metrics here. We're looking throughout the season. So I understand some other guys, were on pace to be that, but they just didn't play enough games. And we're also just looking top 12. So I'm not saying, a top 15 finish is anything to, stick your nose up at. With all that said, the exceptions, Roy Helu, Alfred Morris, both found themselves in Shanahan-led backfields. Zach Stacy was lucky enough to be Jeff Fisher and Brian Schottenhammer's bell cow. And we also had Jordan Howard, Phillip Lindsay, and James Robinson just basically went out in tight situations. So last 10 years, Dwayne, just 6 exceptions to running backs, really being successful and being drafted in those top 3 rounds. And I'm not saying like Michael Carter was a bad pick last year, and he was like the 2nd or 3rd freaking pick in the 4th round. So I think, that sort of small difference, maybe something to take a closer look at. But in general, man, and, Elijah Mitchell did his thing. But once again, Shanahan family has kind of been a trend here. In general, if your favorite running back prospect wasn't picked in the first 3 rounds, you better make damn sure it's on a barren depth chart, because we've seen historically those guys have a hard time getting a huge year 1 role.
Yeah, I mean, the barren depth chart is a big part of it, right? And injuries in the preseason can play a role in that, but then you also mentioned, the Kyle Shanahan folks. I mean, the one thing to look at with that, and I think this is another reason folks were a little bit bullish right last year on Michael Carter, is really that's the scheme, right, that the Jets are running. They're running that wide zone running scheme. They want to condense things in. They want to get the running back to the perimeter. They want to create the explosive plays, on the cutbacks, all those sort of things that we've seen. And if you look at the league now, it's like, man, I mean, how many of our offenses, I haven't even done a count. This is me honestly asking, how many offenses now are basically rooted in either the McVay or the Shanahan tree, which McVay is an offspring, right, really, of the Shanahan tree. I mean, there's a ton of these guys. You got O'Connell. I guess you lose the Kubiak vibe, right, which was really the Shanahan vibe, in Minnesota, but you get, O'Connell going there. You're going to have Hackett now in Denver, so you're going to get a scheme there that's going to be potentially better. We got to see what offensive line coaches these guys sign and, hear more about, like, what are they really going to run that scheme, or is it going to be more of a blend or something new? So I think the good news is, though, there are more and more viable spots that running backs can land, and you can find a friendly scheme. Now, eventually, like if everybody's running this scheme, like defenses have to catch up at some point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you would think so, but at the same time, if it is being developed,
it's been going on forever. I mean, this goes back to Mike Shanahan.
I think it was Ben Solak over at The Ringer. He actually wrote an awesome article a couple of weeks ago about kind of McVay and Shanahan, like starting off, kind of under the same umbrella, but they've kind of differentiated their scheme over the past few years. Again, you can find that over at The Ringer. I think the big takeaway was, McVay, he still doesn't use the fullback nearly as much as Kyle Shanahan does. And then he started looking at some of the motion stuff. Like, dude, the Trent Williams in motion, I understand like it really only worked one of the 3 or 4 times they tried to do it. But like to even think about that, man, I think it just shows you like his, at least in the run scheme, man, on a different level, at least in the year 2022.
Yeah, they're still very similar. But yes, the way they use their personnel. Now this year, you've seen Sean McVay definitely take more of a change, and I think that's because he knows he's got a different quarterback, right? So he's trying to play to the strengths, really, of Stafford overall on the offense. But yes, it's just the way that it's deployed is a little different, right? McVay started using the 3 wide looks versus, with Shanahan, it's much more about a fullback and a tight end. We've also seen variants of this with Kevin Stefanski, where he really uses the 2 and 3 tight ends. Now he'll still use the fullback Janovich, but he's not running the 11 personnel. So then we saw it this year with the Jets, right? They ran more 11 personnel, but I think they'll probably try to get heavier this offseason, and they'll want to run something that's a little bit more like Shanahan. I think these coaches have to adapt their scheme, right, based on the personnel that's available to them.
That's what Mike Lombardi always kind of hated on Doug Peterson, because he said he just took Andy Reid's playbook and like just tried to run that. Here we go. Let's be the KC Eagles essentially. But year after that, Peterson went ahead and won a Super Bowl, so I think he was doing something there.
Isn't that essentially what all owners are doing? Like they're just trying to find the guy that studied the other guy that was really good, and they're like, "Hey, come run that here." I don't know how I don't know why he's beating on him about that. I feel.
Well, like Dwayne, you used to have like coffee every day with Sean McVay, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
let's get Dwayne out on the coaching carousel, see what happens. Back on topic just a little bit here with the running backs. Just we've talked about kind of the free agency landing spots a bit already, but just based on the top 5 spots that, depending on how things shake out in free agency, where a running back could walk in and be a potential high volume day 1 starter. The Cardinals, if they decide not to bring back James Conner or Chase Edmonds, seems kind of unlikely. The Falcons, if CPAT is able to walk, which seems pretty likely. Texans, because they're the freaking Texans. Every position on that depth chart is wide open. Dolphins, running back room, as much as I would like Duke Johnson to continue taking over, I wouldn't say that's the most likely thing in the world, particularly with a new coaching staff. And the Buccaneers, contingent on Lenny Fournette, Ronald Jones, and or Giovanni Bernard bouncing, Keyshawn Bond not holding on to his spot. So we'll have more on the landing spots as we get through free agency and the playoffs. Just something to keep in mind there. Now, Dwayne, the rookies through year 5, again, they're still on their rookie contracts, or they've, just been extended a year or 2 on the team. We're still expecting these guys to be able to put up bunches of numbers. I've kind of just listed off some of the prime candidates that fit this bucket. Obviously, not all of them are going to be top, 12 performers. We only have 12 spots, but these guys should, at a minimum, still be, in line with who we'd expect to put forward big seasons just based on their experience. So these guys are Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, Antonio Gibson, Nick Chubb, David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Elijah Mitchell, Javonte Williams, Damian Harris, Devin Singletary, Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift, Michael Carter, and Miles Sanders. So out of those 3, man, I bolded them here on the screen for you. I do think the ones that I could see being a little bit problematic in the future, Nick Chubb, because let's face it, this Browns offense is not going in the right direction. Kareem Hunt is still there. And, it's just tough for these guys when you start to see this workload build up, as we talked about with Tage on our 10 questions edition of the podcast. 1,500 career NFL carries is about when we see guys start to fall off, just in terms of rushing yards over expected. Chubb's starting to get that odometer up there. David Montgomery, new system, could have Tariq Cohen coming back. And, let's face it, maybe wasn't the best running back, even in his own backfield last year. We also had Josh Jacobs, new staff. Is he going to be someone that's, ascending, or is we going to have the new staff that didn't draft him in the first round saying, hey, why can't this guy average, 4 yards per carry? So with that in mind, Dwayne, do you agree Chubb, Montgomery, Jacobs, maybe the guys we should be taking a longer look at, or is there someone else out of this group that you just think, man, I get it. The age is there, but probably not looking like 2022 is going to be their year.
Like, I think Chubb's fine. Like, you just have to know what you're getting. Like, he still, like, is in the top, like, in every metric that we care about. Like, and he's not, like, at that point of hitting a cliff, in my opinion. Like, and if you look at the 1,500 carries, he's still well under that. Montgomery, I like the scheme, right? You're really going to move more towards that West Coast, kind of scheme. They're going to be running, some variant of what, LaFleur runs, what Shanahan runs, what McVay runs. LaFleur is another guy off of that tree. And so looking at the Bears, that's the scheme that they're going to be running, with Alton there as their offensive coordinator. So that's encouraging to me, but I worry more about situation, right? Tyreek Hill, just looking at Herbert, like he played really well this last season. So that's the bigger concern for me with Montgomery. Jacobs, I agree. Like he's just never been able to really, in my opinion, like just take over, right?
Yeah.
He's and injuries have been a big part of it, for him. But as far as the other guys that would concern me, I think Damian Harris always concerns me because the Patriots want to use multiple backs. We still have questions about, the quarterback and Mac Jones. What's he going to look like? You got your offensive coordinator moving on, and Damian Harris is touchdown dependent, which means he's also game script dependent. So for me, a guy like Harris just depends on what the cost is going to be. It's very clear what you're getting when you draft a Damian Harris, but I just don't see a ton of upside. We know he's not going to take over as an every down back. Miles Sanders is the other one I'm probably just out on, Ian, at this point. It's like I know the touchdown thing, has got to eventually like shake out for Miles Sanders, but it's also a back that they had high expectations around as a second round pick, and he's just never really been able to take over. So he's a guy that I'll probably just be avoiding in drafts.
And again, speaking more here out of the top 12 perspective. So I hear you on Chubb Montgomery. You do have him ranked, 16th and 17th, though, which I think is a good ranking. Just saying, even if Chubb in particular, and with all due respect to Montgomery, but Chubb, top 10, top 12, real life back, top 5. Like
the market's finally going to catch up on Chubb this year. People have been overdrafting Chubb for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Now this year probably will be the year where we might be able to put him on some teams, right? Because I think, folks are going to finally realize that, if you don't catch passes in a PPR, I probably shouldn't draft you in the first 2 rounds.
And like I was on a podcast this week or something. They're like, all right, are we completely done with Ezekiel Elliott? And I was like, well, as a first round pick, absolutely. But if he starts falling a little bit, it depends, Dwayne. It depends. Last thing with running backs here, again, once they go on year 6+, it becomes a bloodbath. I mean, you look at just these overall percentages, 10% in year 6, so 1.2 per year. After that, we are not even hitting an average of 1 per year, maybe in year 7. So looking at that, these are the guys that are expected to be starting, but are now at this point in their career where we should be kind of concerned about how many of these guys we're really going to see putting forward big time seasons. They are Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Melvin Gordon, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, Aaron Jones, Cordero Patterson, Jamal Williams. This scares me, Dwayne. There are a lot of really good running backs in that group that I don't necessarily think are falling off a cliff. With that said, I mentioned the law of 1,500+ pro carries. 3 active guys have hit that: Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, and Melvin Gordon. Obviously, Gordon's landing spot's going to, really depend on things. But at a minimum, Dwayne, I have not published my 2022 rankings yet, but I'm looking forward to jumping in that same, dumpster fire you did by falling, Derrick Henry down the ranks just a little bit. Because at this point in his
I
career,
wish you good luck.
Yeah, man. Here we go.
Just go ahead and block all Titan fans right now.
I'll be getting my eye black on, putting it all over my face, Rambo style. But, with Henry, it's like, okay, again, it all depends on where they're going. But to actually sacrifice, a first round pick on Henry in the year 2022, when we can just get a younger running back with probably a better ceiling floor combination, or hell, just go get a dope wide receiver. There we go. I think that's going to make sense, man.
Yeah, and that's what people get caught up on. It's all about, okay, how can I use this draft capital? What's the macro view, right, before we jump into the micro stuff? And big picture, like you got to take all these things into account, and the 1,500 pro carry thing is real. Now, I like Henry. I get why some people want to draft Henry, because we did see this season before he got hurt, like the upside is still big. right?
Yeah.
He could still be like, if all of a sudden Henry falls into the second round of drafts and he does what he did this last year, that could be enough to be a league winner if he's healthy the whole season. But he's not going to fall that far, folks. A lot of people are taking him at 2 and 3. So that's the challenge. Do you really want to take Derrick Henry at 2 or 3? But the guys I would say that I'm not as worried about would probably be the guys that still get the receptions or the guys that just aren't being drafted early. So, I mean, if you see James Conner and Fournette and these guys getting pushed up to being drafted in the 3rd round, fantasy drafts, 2nd rounds of fantasy drafts, I'm probably not going to be that excited about them. This last year, you could get Connor or Fournette where? Oh, you got them between rounds 8 and 10. It's funny, all this best ball analysis that is out there is basically like, if you waited till rounds 8, 9, and 10 to draft your running back, look how good you were. Well, yeah, because the 2 guys you were drafting were Connor and Fournette. Get rid of all the other backs you were drafting.
And then it's always followed like, look at this article I wrote in June where I called James Conner a value and ranked him as like the RB 36. Like, freaking spare me.
Yeah, I told you James Conner was such a value. I loved him so much. My convictions were so high. I drafted him. I put him at RB 36.
Only ranked 35 guys.
But I'm very scared of Zeke. I'm very scared of Mixon. I'm very scared of super scared of Derrick Henry. But the guys that catch the passes are the most insulated for me, right? So if you look at Eckler, hey, look, man, I was playing Tecmo Bowl and Roger Craig was probably like 35 on that game, Ian, and he was still giving me plenty of utilization, plenty of points. So the guys that catch the passes are the ones I'm least worried about. I know with McCaffrey, most folks are going to be stuck on the injury, but I still feel like with McCaffrey, he's going to be 26.5, I believe, going
RB1
into this next
overall. Move over, Jonathan. I'm sorry. I'm going CMC number 1.
You going CMC? And I think there's still a path, right, for CMC, to really pay off for you just because
full season he's gonna catch 3 times the amount of passes as Jonathan Taylor if they both play 17 games. That's all.
Yeah.
You're
right. No, you're right. That's it. And I mean, it's not like he's going into his age 29 season. I want to say, and I don't have it right in front of me right now, but I want to say CMC will be 26 next season.
Still got Matt Rule back for whatever reason. We've seen him just
doesn't matter. He won't be calling the offense.
I know, but it's when it comes down to like overall usage with, maybe your single best player, I would be a little more confident with McCaffrey compared to our Dalvin Cook or Alvin Kamara situation where it's like, Dwayne, we need to start wondering about the Saints and the Vikings. 1, could we be looking at a rebuild-esque situation? Or 2, like, could Dalvin Cook this year be looking like, maybe like Ezekiel Elliott last year where, okay, he is getting a little bit older in age. Dalvin's better than Zeke right now. I'm not trying to open up that can of worms. But the bigger point was we did see Tony Pollard not overtake the backfield, but at least have a larger role than he had in past years. I know some of that was due to performance. Some of it was also due to Zeke playing banged up. But let's face it, man, we talked about this all throughout the year. When Dalvin Cook got hurt, we crossed his name out and we put Alexander Mattison right there in the rankings. If a new coaching staff is going to come to Minnesota, man, and not have, years of draft capital and money on their mind, we're talking about Dalvin Cook, who, let's also remember, isn't exactly in the best, news articles with what's going on off the field with him and some of things. I think Dalvin Cook's someone that we might want to be pushing a little bit closer to that borderline RB1 spot than usual. And again, if he falls to round 2 or something, that's fine. We'll take the running back projected for 300 plus touches with good health, like no questions asked. I'm fine if he gets down there around 2. But Dalvin Cook, man, might be someone where, like, would it surprise you if we've already seen the best years of Dalvin's career? It wouldn't surprise me at all.
No, we most likely have. I mean, I hate to say it, but we probably have. Could he still come through in a huge way? Could he pull off like a Curtis Martin late, career, like swan song? Like, yeah, he could do it.
That was dope.
Could totally do it. But I mean, for me, I'm probably not going to get much Dalvin Cook just because I've got him ranked as my RB9. Once I put him into my overall ranks with receivers and the elite tight ends and all those things, I mean, he's going to get pushed down, my board. So look, he's another guy I got kind of cooked for. Like, people were all over me about Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, and Joe Mixon. And now we're doing this podcast, and look, where do these guys all land on? They land on this list that you're talking about. I do like Dalvin Cook. I do think he's a solid receiver out of the backfield. So I do think that is something that potentially helps him. Whereas with Mixon, we know he gets more limited, utilization in the passing game.
Bro, why did Alvin Kamara block me on Twitter?
What did you do?
I don't know. I've always been
Are we figuring this out? Are we figuring this out real time?
Yes, I was going to Alvin Kamara's Twitter to see what his reaction was to Sean Payton stuff, and he blocked me.
Oh, dude, what did you do?
Dude, it's Derek Carr and Alvin. Like Derek Carr, like I almost wore as like a badge of honor, like pride. Like I understood it and everything. That's all.
Do I need to look at Alvin Kamara's feed for you?
I think it's because when the Sean Payton thing happened, I never at the players. I think that's ridiculous. But I just tweeted Alvin Kamara trade rumors or request in 3, 2, 1. I think that's true, man. I'm not going to apologize for that.
Yeah, I'm not blocked.
I've been touting Kamara, all swag RB1 for years, and I've now.
He says here, his pinned tweet, Ian says, if you partake in things that suckers do, you a sucker too. So I guess he thinks you're a sucker.
I'm a sucker, ladies and gentlemen. Take Alvin Kamara's word for it. Wow. All right. So speaking of Alvin Kamara, RB, we rank him in top 24, Dwayne, after this. Like, this is insane. How am I
he's coming down the rankings right now.
Just purely because of this.
Yeah, I've got him at RB7 right now, I think he'll be right there. I'm definitely interested to see what happens with the coaching staff. Look, here's the thing with Sean McVay. He manufactures easy touches for the backs. Now, Kamara is also really good at his job. So I would hope that the next coach can also do that. But look, we've already seen he's in a more fragile situation. Yeah. The good news is I can't see another coach trying to use Taysom Hill as a quarterback. So that should be over. That was Sean Payton, just like the ultimate stubborn coach move, right? Get him all this money and it's like, screw this guy. This is all messed up. I'm retiring. Like, what did I do? But as far as, the scheme, it could be problematic. Like the running backs have always been a huge part of Sean McVay's scheme. And that could really change now.
Last one I want to talk about a little bit, and just real quick on Kamara. I think I ranked him RB7 or 8 last year before the Michael Thomas injury came out, because at that point I was like, okay,
yeah, then he had to move him up.
There's only one guy that's going to get the ball in this offense, but yeah, a lot of unknowns moving away from Breeze and now Sean Payton. Like, there's just only one ball to go around, and when we throw on the fact that he is starting to get up there in years. Yeah, hey, if he gets the right quarterback and they throw him 80 passes again, it's going to be impossible for Kamara to bust, but we need to make sure that's still going to be the environment he's in.
Yeah, Cook will be 27, Kamara will be 27, Eckler will be 27, McCaffrey will be 26, Fournette, I'm just looking at your list here and looking at their ages, Fournette and Zeke both will be 27. Aaron Jones, surprisingly, will be 27.
That was the last one I wanted to talk about here, because we also saw with Jones, man, second half of the season certainly didn't quite have the role that we were hoping for. Now, still a playing valuable running back. He is going to be the RB1 more weeks than not in Green Bay. But having someone like Dillon there, man, God forbid Aaron Rodgers, let's say for a second, Aaron Rodgers takes his talents elsewhere. Now we have Aaron Jones as really a 1A back in a committee in a Packers offense that we're expecting to go way down the overall ranks. Jones is definitely not someone we're going to be able to put in the top 12 at that point. And, it's between him and a pretty damn good receiver, even in, round 3 or so, might be, looking elsewhere for once.
Yeah. For Aaron Jones, the problem is, even if Aaron Rodgers stays, the top is gone. Like the big upside potential is officially gone, because AJ Dillon did show enough that we know this is now probably going to move to being a larger and larger committee every year. And I'm not a huge A.J. Dillon fan, like some folks. When I watch A.J. Dillon, I kind of think, meh. I think he looks okay. I think he could play a role on many NFL teams, but he's not an explosive back. He's not breaking these big, long carries.
He gains 4 yards, more impressive than most other backs, but it doesn't matter. And it's not a good, the way he does it, the battering ram that he is, you don't really want those players. We've all seen how the Marion Barbers types flame out, overnight.
Right. But for me, at the end of the day, he's still younger than Jones, and they've got draft capital invested in Dillon, so they had a plan for him when they got there. The coaching staff is still intact. So, look, the upside scenario for Jones just getting the backfield all to himself or handling 60 to 70%, it's gone. And to your point, it's a fragile situation with what could happen to the rest of the roster. So, yeah, Aaron Jones is a guy that obviously there's another shoe still to fall with what happens with Aaron Rodgers here. But at the end of the day, it's going to be really hard to take him over any of the receivers you're probably going to have available in the second round when you try to look at what are the potential range of outcomes here for these two players. Like, for example, you're not taking, there's no way you're taking Aaron Jones over CeeDee Lamb, right?
No.
I mean, the upside for CeeDee Lamb, even though he's disappointed us a little bit so far, I don't want to say that. Like, what Lamb's still done in his first 2 years is like better than what most people think. He just hasn't totally blown up yet. But when you think of range of outcomes, like CD clearly, right, has the much higher ceiling than a guy, like Aaron Jones. And I'm not even looking at ADP right now. Those guys may be like a full round apart already. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to think through what could be some of the potential. My guess is Aaron Jones is a second round pick, maybe a third round pick. And then I'm guessing CD's probably an early second at this point. So I'm just trying to think through some of the young receivers you could be faced with, making a decision on Jones versus the receivers. I'm struggling to find one where I'm like, oh, it's going to be Aaron Jones. Like, there's going to be a pretty long list of receivers you've got to get past first.
We really drew that line last year after, I think, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which, okay, I get it. Didn't exactly go the way we were hoping for, but it was like those 14 running backs that we were good with before really going too hard at wide receiver. I think Jones is going to be, well past that list. Like, we are going to want to take the CDs and those upside wide receiver twos ahead of Aaron this year. Let's talk some wide receivers now, Dwayne. Speaking of the CeeDee Lambs of the world, what we see here is that rookie wide receivers, despite, what we've seen from Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson over the past 2 years, typically don't put up the biggest of numbers. Takes them a little longer, I think, to get acclimated into the offense, become a starter versus running backs. And, you're the starting running back. You're the bell cow. Now, we can talk about different types of bell cow, but you can be the starting wide receiver, still be the number 3, number 4 pass game option in your offense. So I mentioned Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, only other rookies to post a full season top 12 performance last 10 years. Our guy, Jalen Waddle, Michael Thomas, and Odell Beckham. Unreal talents, Dwayne. And, it's only a 5-player sample, so I don't think we have, a major, key here to like unlocking the next rookie receiver. But you do look at the situations, and there are guys where at a minimum, 4 out of the 5, with the only exception being, Tua, they had more traditional straight back pocket passers. And, I did have Waddle. I believe I had him over Devontae. I might have had Devontae Smith still over Waddle, but I think the Waddle gap in ADP was so wide, I got plenty of the guy anyway. But at a minimum, man, it's nothing against Jalen Hurts. The sample we were working on last year, he had thrown for 300 yards in 2 of his first 4 starts. It was only 6 or 7 weeks into the year that they became that heavy of a run-first offense. With that said, man, I think our expectations for guys, going into a system with a Hurts, with a Lamar Jackson, where we just can have a pretty good feeling about the offense being really run heavy, should probably take a little step back on our expectations for these year one rookies. Year one rookies.
Yeah.
Good one, Ian. Way to spell that one out.
Yeah, it's very, Hey, it's in case people didn't know what they were, you double described it for them. Well, I mean, it's a bonus on a Friday, Ian.
Oh, my.
Yeah, and we just don't have the profile, to be honest, of the rookie receivers that are coming in this year. We'll get into them more, like, as we start to talk about prospects. But I've watched 5 of them, like, a ton so far, and I've looked at all of their data. And I think there's some really good receivers in this class. And so we'll look at it again, like when the landing spot gets here. But I think most of the guys, do have some fashion, right, of, an issue, in their game that probably says, it's not going to be someone that's going to finish in the top 12 this year. I do think we'll have rookies that are going to be in the top 24. Probably we're going to have some rookies that'll be in the top 36, receivers this season. But just finding the guys that'll be in the top 12. Typically, like historically speaking, right, those guys are like top 8 picks. So I don't know what that's going to – now, this is a weaker draft class overall, so we could still see, a receiver go higher than what we anticipate, come draft day. Like, I don't think once everything is, like, said and done, like with some of these guys, though, I just don't see, like, Drake London. I know right now we've got him at 12 overall. I don't think Drake London's a round 1 pick, like watching him. Like, Garrett Wilson – he's the one. Like, he's the one that maybe. Like, when you go watch him just run routes, like, he's straight up just, like, clowning people, like, just joking around with them.
Then he gets the ball in his hands, man.
He has, like, 4 different speeds on his routes. If you go watch Drake London, one and a half speeds. There's 1 speed, and he's got a 1.5 gear. It's the same gear that he also tries to use when he catches the ball and run with it. Like, it's all the same. Now, it's not to say London isn't any good. Like, he's a great contested catch guy, great back shoulder guy, great comeback guy. You get him in man coverage, singled up. The biggest thing that scared me with him, Ian, is I watched all 47 of his single man coverage looks versus press, not one time did he stack a cornerback and like literally when he's even, he's not leaving. Like if he's even, he's running a comeback route like that. And that's in college. So, and that's not to say that can't be helpful. When you and I were chatting on the side, like you mentioned Michael Pittman, like I think that's actually a really good comp for Drake London. I actually like Pittman a little bit better than I do London, but right now it's kind of a weak class overall. So some of these guys are getting pushed up the board, but kind of back to like, to the thing at hand, like Wilson is the guy that in the right spot, like just watching him, he can run after the catch, he can get open underneath, he can get open over the top. He's got a lot of nuance, to his route running, not like elite hands, but like good enough hands. Like he's not going to drop the ball a ton. The next one, like for me, like so far of the guys I've really watched is probably Jamison Williams, but he's got to come back from an ACL. He's a guy that looked really good, like stretching the field, horizontally, vertically, beating press coverage. Bigger cornerbacks that can press and get their hands on him, like they can cause some problems, definitely for Jamison Williams. But those are the guys that, first pass, like Treylon Burks, I think he has some upside, but he's got to land in the right spot. So I know we'll come back to those things later. I won't belabor them, but I don't think this year we're going to see a rookie in the top 12. If we do, and we can change our opinions, right? This is just right now. We don't know where they're going to be drafted to, but receivers have to win on their own. The guy that I've seen that most likely could do it would be Garrett Wilson.
I'm with you on the Drake London pause. Like, okay, I like Michael Pittman. I think Michael Pittman could be a third-year breakout this year, which we're going to talk about here in a second. And after I said this comp, I didn't even put together that both these guys went to USC. So please, before you just say Ian's a Jersey watcher and all this, like just from watching them, I saw exactly what you saw, Dwayne. And I think it's reflected in our PFF draft guide that Mike Renner always does such a great job on. Cons for Drake London: he lacks speed, not going to run past corners, also suffered a season-ending broken ankle in October and did have some drop issues. Pros: man among boys, dominant physicality that will still be there in the NFL, loose hips for a tall receiver, and unparalleled catch radius. Those things are great, Dwayne, but that also sounds a little bit like, how we were talking about N'Keal Harry and some of these other guys coming out. And I'm not saying
do not bring up N'Keal Harry.
I'm not saying every early round bust wide receiver is going to be N'Keal Harry, but I would rather at this point, the year 2022, give me the smaller guy that's separating and running away from dudes over the guy that needs to be at 100% health to just dominate NFL corners that, let's face it, he could easily be a year or two in the weight room away from being able to do.
Yeah. And the other thing with London is he was definitely the best player on his team in college, right? Which is saying a lot. Like, that's great. And USC is a really good program. But 45, of his targets were behind the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage, anywhere behind the line of scrimmage and 3 yards downfield. 38% of his targets came in that range. He's not getting those looks in the NFL because he's not an elite run after the catch guy. That's going to go to a different player on the team. So I think how he wins is in single man coverage, running the comeback routes, the back shoulder on the go route, those sort of which can be very valuable, Ian, like to an offense. But he does not scare even college cornerbacks. So I just really get concerned about his ability to scare an NFL cornerback. I think there's going to be some problems with that. I think he could be a nice fit in the right scheme, preferably in a quarterback that plays in rhythm with timing, pass-heavy offense. I think those could be positives for him. So, for example, like name me an elite quarterback. Like if he landed with Josh Allen, right? Pass-heavy offense that we know has a need.
We need like a gunslinger attitude as well. Just real quick, London's comp, Brandon Marshall. Like, okay, he had Jay Cutler, Ryan Fitzpatrick, chucking him up, contested balls. If London can get that, that's fine. But Dwayne, how many quarterbacks do we have like that these days, man?
Yeah. I think like the ultimate landing spot would be somewhere like Buffalo, where you've got an elite young quarterback, a very pass-heavy offense, and we know they have a need for a possession receiver. Right, they need somebody that can play on the backside of some of these bunch formations. Now, Stephon Diggs does that a lot, today, and he can win. Diggs can win at every area of the field. But in a situation like that, I would like Drake London. But if he lands, on a run-heavy team with a cautious quarterback or a balanced team with a cautious quarterback, I'm playing in rhythm like Derek Carr can do that, but he doesn't want to throw contested balls, so that would probably be a problem for him. Like that's why we
just ask the TO/Randy Moss,
Yeah, also known as Brian Edwards. 7% targets per route run versus single man coverage. Sorry, Brian Edwards, wrong team, buddy.
My God. Yeah, had a article go up on PFF last week where I looked at the available targets coming into all these passing games and just kind of wrote out the early top 5 potential, either trade destinations for some of these guys, the Calvin Ridleys of the world, or, a nice spot for a receiver to be drafted into. In the Arizona Cardinals, like literally everyone other than Hopkins and Rondale Moore are free agents. Kyler Murray, pretty damn good quarterback. Will he, force things or feed one receiver to the extent that we're looking for? Maybe another problem, but just in terms of available targets, not a bad spot. Chicago Bears, assuming Allen Robinson's leaving, really just leaves them with Darnell Mooney and Cole Komet. Justin Fields, year 2 leap, you could imagine. Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, enough said. Los Angeles Chargers, replacement for Mike Williams. That could be a decent spot for Drake London. Ends up being Justin Herbert's number 2 for years. And maybe, just maybe, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if Kyle Trask or whoever is worth a damn, purely because we got Godwin, Gronk, and Fournette, 3 guys with over 80 targets last year, potentially taking their talents elsewhere. All right, Dwayne. The third year boom at wide receiver. That's one of the things that jumps off at this chart. 17% tied with year 5 wide receivers as the highest, single kind of years of experience mark that we can expect success. So out of this group, we should see at least 2 of these guys. Justin Jefferson, duh. After that, though, Dwayne, we got Darnell Mooney, Michael Pittman, Van Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Brian Edwards, KJ Osborne, Chase Claypool, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, Gabriel Davis, and Jerry Jeudy. Name 1 or 2 guys out of this group that you just want to be especially high on. And look, I know you still got to see how these depth charts go. If the Bills decide to not draft anyone, see a Beasley, see a Emmanuel Sanders, Gabriel Davis is going to be far up there. But otherwise, man, kind of seems to me like CeeDee Lamb, and then why not Michael Pittman, could be the year 3 boom candidates.
Yeah, and in today's NFL, a lot of these guys are typically breaking out in year 2, which is really like, and we don't even have to have Justin Jefferson on the list. He's already done a double breakout, right? But I think Mooney showed something this year. I think he took another step forward that people didn't anticipate. I agree, Pittman's more of a dark horse, just because he doesn't have as many outs to a big season, right? It's really all got to come through volume. Like, he's not going to also help you out with a ton of big plays if the volume doesn't come. Whereas a guy like Van Jefferson is going to be more dependent on the big plays. We know he's not going to overtake Cooper Kupp, right? And then if you get Robert Woods back or you keep Odell Beckham Jr., like, he's got issues on the depth chart. So I mostly agree with what you have here. I think that CeeDee Lamb obviously is a huge one. Claypool is a really good one. Ayuk we like. I think he's a good player, but man, like, just the scheme, the run-heavy nature, 2 other targets.
That was with Jimmy. Like, it's going to be even worse with Trey.
It probably will be even worse with Trey. And T. Higgins, like, look, Higgins and Lamb have already broken out, but I think those are my 2 favorites on this list. I think my next guy would be Jerry Jeudy and then Gabriel Davis. And I'm going to actually write a pretty big piece on this. Like, I've got like the bones for it done. I don't know when it'll be. Probably here. It'll be before the NFL draft or sometime right around there. But it's going to really look at, okay, receivers that didn't break out in year 1, or 2, but did in year 3, that kind of thing. And like, what were kind of the indicators? What were the things that we saw? And then what are their comps? That kind of thing. Like, so which guys might we be able to look at more this year? And all the guys you have on this list will be like part of the article and like, what do we think? But Lamb, man, I really love him. Like, it's an interesting argument, right? Because a lot of people will argue that it was the scheme and that it was Dak, but at the same time, there's also like, if you're a quarterback and you're back there, like, don't you just, why didn't he just throw it to Lamb more? Like, I don't get it. Like, he's like, no, I've got Dalton Schultz. Like, got to get me that, 2-yard rack. I went back and like, even it had me so like baffled. I went back and like studied all of Dalton Schultz like college stats. Like, nope, nothing to see here, folks. Just move along. I don't know what's going on.
Oh my God. Yeah, man. And like Schultz, I can even see Schultz maybe coming back next year to the Cowboys, but then not doing anything the same, because I really think they entered the year wanting Blake Jarwin to be their leading receiver, but Schultz was, to his credit, a little more complete, and then Jarwin ends up getting banged up again. So
here are your previous year 3 breakouts, Ian, guys that didn't break out in year 2.
Okay.
And when we say breakout, it's top 12, right? Well, you kind of the definition you've given. So I got it pulled up here. You got Brandon Cooks, didn't do it in his first 2 seasons, did in year 3. That was in New Orleans. Then you got Calvin Ridley doing it in year 3. Injuries were a big part of it for Calvin. He might have had it. He might have had the potential breakout before that without injury. Chris Godwin, what happened? New coach came in. put him in the big slot, with
Djax left, Humphreys left.
Yep. Nice. So you had targets open up. You had an ascending player who got put into a great spot. And historically, we've always seen the big slot work out well, right?
Ridley, I know Ridley didn't play the big slot, but he did benefit too from Mohamed Sanu leaving, and they just didn't even really address it.
Yeah, and it's kind of a combination, right? People leaving doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're going to be great. Yeah. But if there are other good players that can demand targets, and you also demand targets that you're having to share, right? All of a sudden, there's less people demanding targets. Nobody else steps up, but you still demand them. Like your target share increases. Yeah. So it can be chicken or the egg kind of an argument, but you have to be talented on some level to earn these targets. But here's another one. Cooper Kupp broke out in year 3. He had a top 12 finish. People forgot all about that, right? And that was in 2019. You had Devontae Adams, who finally did it, in 2016.
Deontay Johnson?
Deontay Johnson? No, he was a year 2 guy, I guess.
Oh, okay.
I don't have him in this list that I have sorted. Hopkins was a year 3, top 12. Demaryius Thomas, Des Bryant, Eric Decker, Hakeem Nicks. All of these guys got their first top 12 finish in their 3rd season. Got a couple more here. Kenny Golladay, Mike Evans, Michael Thomas, Mike Wallace, Percy Harvin, T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, so obviously Jefferson's already got there. So, okay, Mooney, Pittman, CD, maybe Claypool, Higgins. Did Higgins already get there? No, but...
No, he's close.
Very close.
Well, did he? I have to go look over.
I don't think so. He didn't get top 12. I'm sure he was like 15, 16. Okay.
He was up there. He was getting close, but yeah.
Make sure you keep an eye out for Dwayne's year 3 boom candidates. And I got my money on no mentions of Laviska Shenault in the entire article, unfortunately. Now, Dwayne, looking ahead.
He's going to have to be mentioned now. And it'll be his own paragraph, and I'll make it like 1,000 words. And it'll just be the names of all the players that have to move out of the way for Laviska Shenault.
And also, the Jaguars cannot draft the following receivers. So again, at wide receiver, it's not like running back where we see this, big time decline. We still see double the amount of wide receivers in year 8 compared to running backs putting up big seasons. With that said, there still is a decline. There's, players get older, and unless you're a really, really good quarterback or a tight end attached to a really, really good quarterback, you're probably going to see your performance start to suffer. So here are the wide receivers, going into year 8 or later that could be on decline. Now we still see about 2.4 of these players per year find their way into the top 12. With that said, we do need to start looking a little bit closer at them, I think, because the age is starting to get up there. So pure beasts, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Antonio Brown. Pretty damn tough to have a problem with Diggs or Adams if they're going to remain attached to these quarterbacks. With that said, Dwayne, Mike Evans now might have way too much volume to even worry about this, because even if we are seeing him decline, if Godwin's out of the picture and they don't make a real investment there, even without Brady, man, if Evans is looking at 150 plus targets, going to be awfully hard to fade. Keenan Allen also attached to Justin Herbert. Antonio Brown, well, we'll see what happens there. So I don't think any of those guys necessarily have major cause for concerns, because
Evans would be the one for me. I want to hear that he gets moved inside to the slot. Okay. That's what I want for him at this point in his career. So if you look at him in his age 22 season, 29%, adjusted target share. So that just gets, he played 15 games. So I'm just adjusting for the game he missed. And if you look at age 23 season, 29%, but then it went down to 23%, 22%, 22%. At his age 27, season 17%. And then whatever he had last year. So which is probably around 16, 17%. So he's definitely been, on a steady decline. So he does worry me. I would like to see him, if you get Chris Godwin moving on, I think the slot could be a huge help for him. With a guy like Keenan Allen, he still gets to play from the slot, a ton, and so he's not having to go vertically down the field. So I worry less about a player like Keenan Allen. Also, Keenan still has his quarterback intact, which is a great thing. Evans has still got to figure out who's going to be the quarterback throwing him the ball. So that could be problematic as well.
And if they bring back Godwin or like a first round receiver, yeah, Evans definitely falling down the ranks. There is still a pathway for him, though, to get an inefficient volume was my point. Some guys, best days, I think, could be starting to get behind them. Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, Tyler Lockett, Adam Thielen, OBJ, Cole Beasley, Allen Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins, Bobby Trees, Robert Woods. Love that his teammates actually call him Bobby Trees as well. That was a fun little fact from Cooper Kupp. Also, Devontae Parker and Jarvis Landry. Dwayne, out of this group, which of these guys are you kind of most confident in, continuing to just put up big numbers? I mean, hell, Amari Cooper, even though he's been in the league 8 years, still just, sitting at a young age of 22 years old. So maybe could, still have some big years ahead of him.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Amari just because he never truly became an alpha anyway. Like he's always just kind of been like right there on the border of being one, despite all the traits and everything we saw in college, saying that he should have been. But I think of this group, the one I have the most confidence in is probably Tyler Lockett because of the scheme that he plays in, the way they use him. They play him inside in the slot. He gets a lot of matchups against linebackers and safeties and these deep overs and crossers. It's just such a mismatch problem in the scheme. Like I feel good about him. Now he needs Russell Wilson, to stay, and he's obviously still going to have some boom bust to his game because he always does. That's just the way this thing works. But guys like Landry, yeah, the role he plays, he could probably still continue to play, but it's not like a guy we're that excited about drafting anyway. Devontae Parker's always hurt. Robert Woods, we now have an injury on the books, and Cooper Kupp is completely taken over. I think I'm okay still with Hopkins. I'm going to look at this as really being an injury-riddled season. Like, the bottom line is, though, like, once these guys start to get to this age, any one of them really are a candidate to start to drop. Like, I did a study last year, and I need to go back and redo it because I did it based on their breakout. And then I did their N+ season from their breakout. Well, you and I were just talking. Some guys break out in year 3, some break out in year 1. I can't even remember why I did it this way because I guess I'm just an idiot. But anyway, like looking at the N+6 season, one, most receivers don't get there, right? So there is some survivorship, bias. But when you start to look at it, like here are the guys that made it to their N+6 season of their breakout and their target shares. And these were guys that are all, up in the 25% range. So if you look at, some of them are probably on this list, but Macklin in his N+6 season, age 29, that helps. There's some reference. Like he dropped down to 16% where he had a 27% or just 2 years before. Josh Gordon dropped down to 12%. Julio Jones, who he got to his age 31 season before we really saw a decline, which was his N+7 season. But he had, you listen to his 28%, these are target shares, 26%, 31%, 27, 27, 27, then down to 23 in his age 31 is where his cliff started. Keenan Allen still good. Michael Crabtree, it was really his N+6 season where it started to fall off. He fell down to 20%. He was in his age 30 season. You got Mike Evans, we already mentioned. Odell Beckham Jr., that's where it started for him. He dropped to 20%. He had been at 24%, 27, and 27% the years before. So, we have a lot of guys on this list that are getting towards this. Randall Cobb, he had already dropped off. That's it. T.Y. Hilton was the other one, where his was actually in his N+6 season too, where he started to drop off. So, but the average target share, like across all these guys I just named, and they're all between basically 28 and 30 years old, 18% across all of them. And these are guys that used to demand 25 to 30% target share. So even though these guys can continue to play, like their upside probably isn't quite what we thought. Like another one we would add to this, this last year we saw was Allen Robinson. Like he completely just face planted.
And I think it's enough of a reason, man. Again, you don't need to shape your entire draft rankings by all this, but it's a pretty good tiebreaker, man. Like if it's pretty close between one of these guys entering year 8 or 9 and someone entering year 3 or 4, just take the younger guy.
You should tier them
particularly in Dynasty. Yeah.
Guys that you think are going to play similar roles that have similar abilities, you should tier them by age. You should have a tier of say 10 players and then say 4 of them are under 25 years old. They should be at the top of that tier. They've just got more upside. Now there could be extenuating circumstances, right, that make you change that. The I know better kind of stuff you got to work through. But overall, if once you group players together, then you should immediately move the younger guys to the top of that group.
Do not be afraid to be an ageist in fantasy football, everyone. Now, handful of guys that just definitely...
You guys are drafting Ian, not Dwayne.
Definitely seem to have lost a step here. Marvin Jones, AJ Green, Emmanuel Sanders, Sammy Watkins, Julio Jones, and T.Y. Hilton. Anyone here you're exactly expecting a bounce back from, Dwayne? The only one that I could even somewhat see is if everyone is just like, all right, Julio, you're done. And he like ends up like in the late wide receiver 30, wide receiver 40 range. Like that's the only kind of scenario that I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I mean, it's super just take a flyer kind of thing at that point, right? It's not costing you anything in your draft capital. You're just making a bet on an old dog that like is one of the best ever, So look, everybody likes to have a bet like that, put down. But I mean, I think ADP is going to be so reasonable on all these guys. If there's a reason that you're telling yourself you want one of them based on the situation they land in, they're going to be so cheap it won't matter.
Knock yourself out. Go have fun. Go have fun, kids. Do whatever you want. Tight end, we don't need to spend too much time on this. Basically, year one, you need to be, just a complete, quote unquote, generational talent. Gronk did it back in 2010. Evan Ingram got there, but Evan Ingram got there because OBJ broke his ankle 4 games into the year, and then he ended up being the featured number 1 target on a bad Giants team. And also Kyle Pitts last year. Those are literally the only rookie tight ends we've had. I see Trey McBride, tearing it up, all the clips that, Dwayne, on the sidelines of the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl, was it literally just 50 analysts with their phones pointed out on the field? Do people actually talk at these things, or is it just one, phone clip after another? So, with McBride, I know it's going to be sexy to get behind him, but no, just don't do it. I can't even really think of a situation, Dwayne, where I can get behind a rookie tight end this year. I did just write an article on something close to the matter, so maybe I should address that a little bit. But in general, Dwayne, just fade rookie tight ends. It's worked for us almost every single time.
Yeah. There's not a tight end in this class. We don't have a Kyle Pitts, and we both love McBride. We've had our DMs on the side where we've talked about him and, how good he looks. All the metrics stack up really well for him. And again, ADP is where it matters. Who knows? If he's being taken, I think right now, on underdog, he can basically be your last round pick. You want to do something like that? I think that's fine. That as this is a guy that I guarantee you is going to pick up steam between now and the NFL draft. And then depending on what team he lands on, he could totally get steamed heading into draft season.
There were some situations where, as a complete late flyer, okay. The Arizona Cardinals, Zach Ertz and Max Williams are free agents if they both leave. Again, mentioned before, kind of the allure of the target in that offense because of how many available targets they have. Los Angeles Chargers, each of Jared Cook, Steven Anderson, and Donald Parham are free agents. With the Giants, Evan Ingram's a free agent. Kyle Rudolph really didn't stop him from playing a full-time role, and they can also get out of that contract if they want to. With the Seahawks, Gerald Everett and Will Dissly are free agents. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Gronk, and OJ Howard as well. Cam Brate, they've been able to get out of that $40 million contract for the last 5 years, and they just keep on paying Cam Brate money. So good on you, Cam Brate. Just real quick, Cowboys.
No year two boom candidates, Ian, here on the list. I see third year.
Hold on. I'm just going.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just going through these situations and we can get to that. Cowboys do need to re-sign Dalton Schultz, but Blake Jarwin is going to remain on the roster. We'll see what happens in Green Bay. Robert Tonyan is a free agent. Texans, like any other position on the roster, you can imagine. Bengals could lose CJ Uzomah, but like Uzomah was this year, whoever the tight end is going to be will be a number 4 pass game option in the offense. Jets could be losing Tyler Kroft and Daniel Brown. That'd be, I think, maybe the most interesting one. If for some reason the Jets decide to, go high draft round with the tight end, you could see them getting a role sooner rather than later. And finally, Mike Gesicki could be on the move from Miami. Basically a big slot receiver anyway, but Durham Smythe, also a free agent. We'll see what that offense looks like in 2022. But Dwayne, as you brought up,
real quick on those, remember to survive in one of the schemes that gives you the best looks against the linebackers and safeties, which is that Shanahan scheme, you typically have to be able to block as well. So people talk about Kittle being a great athlete, but he's also he's a great blocker as well because they like to run the ball so much. So it's just, it's pretty rare to find a guy that can do all of that like what Kittle does. So I like the places you name, but a lot of those slot type tight ends like Gesicki, like he's not really a great fit for what they want to do. If they want to really try to make everything be based off of their run game and play action, like it's great for the matchups for the tight ends, but you have to be able to run block.
Who knows, man? Chris Herndon's a free agent. Like he could just go take any one of those starting spots.
Everything would come back to Herndon. Full
hour and like 20 minutes. Yeah, we got our first Chris Herndon reference. You mentioned though, Dwayne, there has been a nice little bump from year 1 to year 2. Again, just 2% of the 120 tight end ones were rookies. 9% occurred in year 2, though. 18% in year 3. So, Dwayne, like talking about the year 2 booms, this is just your way of wanting to bring up Pat Freiermuth, right?
Yeah, I think Freiermuth is one for sure. I mean, we saw him start to do that this past season, so my biggest point is like just with these tight ends, we do start to see it more in year 2 now. It used to always be later, but you get a few of these. So here are the names. Here are all the year 2 names that broke into the top 12. TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, Mark Andrews, Dallas Goedert, Mike Gesicki, George Kittle, David Njoku, Richard Rodgers back in 2014, Ooh. Travis Kelce, Kyle Rudolph, Rob Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham, and Aaron Hernandez. Those guys all broke out as year 2 guys.
Quickly bringing up just our rookies from last year. But, I mean, look, Kyle Pitts is going to, again, be incredibly high, as he should be, in the overall ranks. What do you have him, Dwayne? Tight end 4?
Yeah, I believe I've got him at 4 right now. Hang on. I'm flipping over to mine.
After Pitts, I think Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, I've got him 4. Okay.
And what did Freiermuth actually finish the season with more top 12 finishes than Pitts? That was such a fun storyline when it was happening. After that, oh my gosh. Oh, Dwayne, I saw this the other day. I got really excited. Guess who's a free agent in Carolina?
So are we gonna have Tommy Trembles?
Tommy Trembles.
Tommy Trembles.
Ian Thomas, unrestricted free agent. Now, we've seen in the Joe Brady offense, they were not using their tight ends at all. Maybe, just maybe, Tommy Trembles, our guy, has the speed, has all the athletic stuff you're looking for, and we know he can block. Maybe, just maybe, Dwayne. And I don't want to attach him to Sam Darnold, but hey, we want to find the next Dawson Knox. I know he was a year 3 guy, but we want to find a good offense. If the Panthers can make a serious quarterback upgrade, Tommy Tremble could be that guy at the end of your draft that you just end up looking up after week 1. It's like, oh, this is an every down starter in a decent enough passing game.
Major athletic profile. So he's definitely got that going for him. Also has the fact that, Terrace Marshall pretty much, just stumbled out of the gate. Now, we could see a ton of 11 personnel. You're going to have Ben McAdoo there. Ben McAdoo was running 11 personnel. 11 personnel wasn't cool. He didn't do anything else good, but he was running 3 wide receiver sets at a time when the league didn't really want to. So we'll have to see. But if Tremble, is in a scenario where he could be on the field all the time, that's the first criteria, right? Can you be out there for 80% of the routes? And then the next thing is, okay, great. Can you get to 18 to 20% targets per route run on your 80% of routes? If you do, most often you're going to be top 5 tight end. Next year's going to be pretty flush in the top 5. I don't see any guys that I'm really concerned. Could they be in the top 5? I feel pretty good about all the guys that we have there. But just outside of that, right? The guys next year will most likely be the guys fighting for 6 through 8 or 6 through 9, somewhere in there. Tremble could, have a chance to make some noise. Brevin Jordan would be the other one that I would say, there's a rookie only being 22 years old heading into next year. He flashed at certain points this year, didn't get, all the playing time we would hope for. But again, tight ends, it's tough to come in and play a ton of snaps as a rookie because a lot of it comes back to strength, being able to block, do all those things. So we could see more from Brevin Jordan in year 2.
In Dwayne's 2022 early ranks, number 1, Mark Andrews, 2, Kittle, 3, Kelce, 4, Pitts, 5, Waller. We do see Pat Freiermuth sneaking in there at tight end 8. And if Gronk retires like we're thinking, Pat Freiermuth, top 7 tight end the year 2022. Gotta love that. Now, Dwayne, we talked to some of the second-year guys. What about the third-year boom candidates? There's Cole Komet, Adam Troutman, Josiah Deguara, Alberto, Juwan Johnson, Harrison Bryant. Komet, I think, is someone that we can all agree on. And I've seen some people give Comet like he like his next broken tackle will be his first joke, which okay, we can laugh about it, but like
a lot of tight ends like that though.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of tight ends like that. The biggest thing for Comet, man, is you look at this roster, he has a legit chance to be the number 2 pass game option in this offense. And he's at least shown us some level of ability as a receiver, and we already know he can play every single down. So yeah, new coaching staff coming in. We got to monitor some things, but Comet and maybe a post-hype Troutman seem like the top 2 potential third-year booms here.
Yeah, I like Comet. Like I've got him at 14, right now in my ranks. I'm actually excited about the scheme that's coming in. And Comet is a guy that we've seen be able to play in line. He can stay out there to help with run blocking. He can also be out there, in situations where they're going heavy down by the goal line. So, I mean, he is one of the guys that has a chance like to be on the field enough that like no matter what the play call is, they check out of it, check to something else. He gets the right look. He can be on the field. So I do like him. Again, it's like you mentioned, third-year guy. Targets versus man, targets versus zone are all steady. So it's not like he's just good in one particular area. And the other part is like just looking like at the rest of the guys. Like, again, I like to lean into unknown a little more. Like the further you go in drafts, it's like you're just looking for the upside. And when you start talking about, some of these names that he's down around, I just feel like Comet is the one that's probably the youngest, right, out of them that gives us a chance at a ceiling that we probably know at this point some of these other guys don't have.
Now, Dwayne mentioned before, but quarterback and tight end, this is where we see actually a large percentage still thriving 10 plus years into the league for tight end. 20% of the 120 tight end ones over the last 10 years did have at least 10 years of experience under their belt. The 4 main qualifiers coming up. And again, we should expect at least, 2 to 3 of these guys to potentially turn in a top 12 performance. Travis Kelce, duh. And then Zackers, Gronk. Well, again, I'm just anticipating him retiring. So removing Gronk from the equation. Kelce, Ertz, and Jared Cook. Now we need to see what happens with Ertz and Cook in free agency. At a minimum, Dwayne, if the Cardinals and, you trade for the guy mid-season, I would think that they're kind of in the driver's seat to re-sign Zach Ertz. It could be awfully interesting. I know Ertz got a lot of his production done without having DeAndre Hopkins sharing the field with him. At the same time, man, he was the overall tight end 4 after joining the Cardinals in week 7 the rest of the year. Again, Waller was hurt during that stretch. We got some bye week, fuckery going on with that and everything. With that said, Dwayne, Zach Ertz, if he returns to Arizona and people are just like, Zach Ertz, he's old, man, that could be the nice late round option. I'm not sure if he would even make it to late round, though, because, again, he did have a nice little stretch there.
Yeah, once he got with the Cardinals, like the numbers we talked about, like came to life. His routes run per dropback surged to 83%. That fueled 7 top 12 finishes over a 12-game stretch. Yards per route rank. Yards per route run, yards per route run, we're back up nice, 1.42, which is pretty solid, for a tight end in 2021. And he posted, Ian, a career high, 4.7 yards after the catch.
Right, all off that one like chunk 50-yard touchdown he had in the first game, but that's great. Good for you, Zach.
Hey, look, I just took it as when you bleach your hair blonde, like you add another gear. Like that's my takeaway. That's the correlation that I see. So yeah, with Ertz, look, again, you talked about it. Like these guys can play a long time, and think about it. Like they're playing against a lot of zone coverage, playing against linebackers, playing against safeties. You don't necessarily have to be able to run away from these guys. A lot of it comes down to just being on the same page with your quarterback. These little subtle movements and being on that same wavelength seems to be just such a huge part of being a tight end. Gronk could keep playing. He should. Like, in my opinion, like Gronk should keep playing. Like, yeah, I know he's probably like, I'm not the Gronk I used to be, right? Where you could just destroy any kind of coverage. You could play against cornerbacks. Your run after the catch was so elite. But man, like he's still really good. Like I think he's the best free agent tight end available, despite the fact, that he'll be 33 years old because of all the things we just talked about with Ertz. But I think that Gronk, he's a bigger player, bigger wingspan, better hands, still a better athlete than Ertz. But yes, I'm interested in either one of these guys should they land in the right situation. I think Gronk's still good enough, Ian, to be a secondary option on most teams, not the primary target, but like the second target. He could easily be the third target on almost any team. And then if you look at Ertz, I think he could still be a solid second target or a good third target, just depending on the landing spot. Just doing the things we talked about, not trying to be a hero like what you're going to expect out of Kittle, what we expect out of Pitts next year, Waller, Kelsey, Andrews, those guys. He's not going to do the things those guys are going to do, but he can still get open, keep the chains moving for an offense, and be a good friend to a quarterback.
I liked in your tight end article, Dwayne, where you analyzed the top free agent tight ends available. You had, again, your top tier category, Rob Gronkowski, actually the only solid secondary target in most offenses. That was the tier 1. Went through, tier 2, tier 3, and then we got to, tier 3, just former first round picks, Evan Ingram, OJ Howard, David Njoku.
I ran out of steam and I'm like, what am I going to call this tier? Oh, these guys former first round picks. What's funny is the article, I actually had 5 other names. I was like, I'm not writing about all these guys. These 4 first round picks. And so we know that draft capital matters, right? In the NFL, you keep getting your chances, but the thing is if you got on that article, you can show people dude, look at all of the age 33 plus, fantasy finishes. That's a long list since 2011, minimum 50% routes, basically to get rid of injuries. Right. But I know to top the list, you got your guy, Jimmy Graham, but the ranks to the right. So it's not it's just top 12s, but look at all those, Delaney Walker, at age 33 had a tight end 4 finish. You got Jason Witten with a tight end 9 at age 35. Keep going down. You got
Jason Witten, tight end 11 at age 37. He came back.
Yes.
And it was all right.
Ben Watson getting on the list twice in 2015 and 2017 at age 35 and 37, with 2 top 12 finishes. So the moral of the story being at tight end, you can really get up there. You got multiple guys here with top 12 finishes at age 35 or higher.
That's the thing. I remember when I tweeted out this chart, some people were like, oh, this is just a Brady and Gronk are the 2 guys highlighting it. It's okay, Brady, at least for quarterback, good chunk of them. But even then, man, we see the same thing at tight end. There's just a lot of older players.
Look at Tony Gonzalez, dude. I wrote this thing and going back and looking at it, I'm 2013, he's 38 and he finishes tight end 2.
Tony Gonzalez.
Finishes tight end 2 at age 37. Finishes tight end 4 at age 36. If we're rounding the ages up. Antonio Gates had some nice ones too. So, look, it's the elite guys keep playing, and Gronk has definitely been one of our elites. So, and Ertz is right there on the cusp of, he wasn't quite in that elite class, but really good for a 3 to 4 year stretch. So I think both guys could still be good for fantasy. And it's one position where you don't have to lean into the youth as much, right? Maybe that's an edge you can use. You spend your early picks, really grabbing up all the youth at receiver and running back, right? And you can wait on tight end and know that you can still use these guys that get older because we have multiple data points saying that the guys that were really good can continue to play well into their 30 years old, 35 up into 36, 37 year seasons.
I want to remind everyone, if you've enjoyed articles we brought up, the ranks, the tools, anything like that, from now until February 14th, you can get 25% off any PFF subscription if you use code SUPER25. Also got betting dashboards, PFF NFL Greenline, NFL Draft Guide, and so much more. Again, support the pod. Use promo code SUPER25 for 25% off any sub. Also want to give a shout out to our friends over at DraftKings. You can download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use promo code PFF, and get 56-1 odds on either team. Bet just $5 and get $280 in free bets if your team wins. That's promo code PFF at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the Super Bowl 56, 21 years or older. See DraftKings.com/sport for details. Full list of requirements and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in Tennessee. Call the TN Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. In Connecticut, call 888-789-7777. In New York, call 8778-HOPPING. Shout out to Western Southern. The Fantasy Podcast is sponsored by Western Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western Southern helps advance your money moves, buying your first home, plan to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow. Western Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Dwayne, I watched The Big Short last night for like the third or fourth time. And I don't know, man, maybe I should get more financial advice from Western Southern than Hollywood movies, based from like 15 years ago. So just an idea there. Team up to understand needs and address goals with the game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. Finally, shout out to our friends over at Manscaped. This Valentine's Day, it's time to join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, the leaders in below the waist grooming, with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com, use code PFF for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code PFF. Join Cupid and shoot your arrow with Manscaped this Valentine's Day.
Ian, are you in the pantry?
Yep. Mom's basement. Chilling.
Like, you look like you're in a pantry.
Chilling in Columbus. I got
awesome.
Pantry stuff over one shoulder and my candle making supplies.
I think is that
over the other.
Pepper shaker back behind you?
I don't know.
What is that?
I'm trying to look through without turning my head. I can't really tell either. I need glasses too, Dwayne. That's the other problem going on here. Like I used
to see. You might be moving down into a tier with Dwayne.
Well, no, I've had glasses since I was like in 5th grade, but once I quit my consulting job and I didn't need to like see a board from across the room anymore, I just stopped getting them. And now I just look at a screen all day. My eyes are worse than ever. And I don't even have contacts or glasses like when I want to go to things. So I'm A+ squinter though, Dwayne, like up there with
Jameis.
Costanza level. Oh,
Costanza and Jameis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man! All right,
yeah,
that's
over my shoulder. I just have a bunch of stuff I don't understand, like my daughter and all her friends. It's Among Us like stuff, so I don't know. Like, it says Baca. It says you're sus. I don't know what any of this means. It's probably like really bad stuff that's now like on the air on PFF's YouTube channel.
It's a mix of your like future article ideas and random notes from.
My article ideas get erased off of there for that stuff.
Oh my goodness. All right, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this edition of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, trying to keep, longer term macro dynasty view throughout these February months here. We'll have plenty of free agency draft goodness on the way as well. Dwayne and I will be back at least 2 times a week, throughout the offseason. It's always a great day to be great, Dwayne. I love talking about football with you, and I hope the listeners, can tolerate it as well. Anything else you want to get off your chest, my friend?
No, man, I will say, though, like, getting to dig into these rookies is a blast. Like, just watching them, like, last 2 days, like, I've just been watching as much film, as I can. So super stoked. Like, I've been taking my notes and then matching that up with all of the unique data and stuff that we have. And so we'll start to be able to package those things together and put together some shows talking about the rookies and what's coming. I know I've been getting a lot of DMs from different folks asking about it. So we're definitely grinding on it, and I'm excited about what we're going to be able to do.
Stay tuned, everyone. For Dwayne, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.